Honey, I am coming home soon and I love you. The cold is quite cold here. I miss you too. See you soon.
Okay, talk soon. My one and only husband has missed me. I can't wait to connect with him.
Welcome to Nigeria. Thank you. It's good to be home again. My husband and my friend! You guys married while I was on traveling? The world is wicked, oh. Please forgive us.
Sorry.
The sun was setting over the village of Ogodi, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, but Adanna saw none of its beauty. Her heart pounded so hard against her chest she thought it might break through. She stood frozen at the entrance of her own compound, the heavy wooden gate half open before her. Inside, she could hear the joyful sounds of children laughing and a woman humming a familiar tune. With trembling hands, Adanna pushed the gate fully open, and what she saw made the world stop spinning. Her husband, Chuka, was sitting on a mat under the mango tree, a little girl on each knee. And beside him, laughing and handing him a cup of water, was her best friend, Amara. Amara, who wore a beautiful wrapper tied around her waist, leaned in and placed a gentle kiss on Chuka's cheek. Adanna's luggage slipped from her fingers and crashed to the ground. The sound made everyone turn. The look of horror that dawned on Amara's face, and the guilt that flooded Chuka's eyes, told Adanna everything she needed to know. In the 3 years she had been away in Germany, studying to build a better future for them all, her husband and her best friend had built a life without her. A life that now included 2 beautiful daughters. How could this be? Hello, welcome to Echoes of the Baobab Trees. If you love African folktales told with passion, emotion, and lessons that stay with you long after the story ends, then you have found your home. Before you leave this video, please do me one small favor. Click that like button, it helps our stories reach more people who need to hear them. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Thanks. Let's continue the story. 3 years earlier, life in Lagos had been sweet for Adanna. She was a young woman with big dreams, working as a seamstress in the busy market of Ketu. Her hands were magic with a needle and thread, and her heart was full of love for her husband, Chuka, a hardworking tailor who owned a small shop nearby. They had been married for only 2 years, and their love was the talk of their small compound. Adanna's best friend since childhood, Amara, lived just 2 streets away. Amara was like a sister to her, someone she told every secret, someone who laughed with her and cried with her. When Adanna received a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to travel to Berlin, Germany, for a 2-year advanced fashion and design course, her heart was torn in two. The night before she left, Adanna held Chuka's hands tightly in their small room. Tears streamed down her face, wetting the colorful fabric of her nightgown. "Chuka, my husband," she whispered, her voice thick with sorrow. 2 years is a long time. It will be hard to be so far from you. Chuka pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "It is for us, Adanna. For our future. You will learn so much, and when you return, we will open the biggest fashion house in all of Lagos. I will be here, waiting for you." The next morning, Amara came to see her off at the motor park. Amara held her tight and promised, "Don't you worry about Chuka, Adanna. I am his friend too. I will check on him, make sure he is eating well. You just go and make us all proud." For the first few months in Germany, Adanna and Chuka spoke every day. The calls were filled with "I miss you" and dreams of the future. Adanna would describe the beautiful buildings in Berlin, and Chuka would tell her about his day at the shop. Amara kept her word. She would often call Adanna to report that she had just brought Chuka some hot pepper soup, or that she had helped him organize his shop. Adanna felt so blessed to have such a faithful friend. "Thank you, Amara," Adanna would say, relief and gratitude filling her heart. "You are truly a gift from God." Amara would always laugh and reply, "What are friends for, Ada? Don't worry about a thing here." Little by little, the calls from Chuka became less frequent. At first, Adanna thought it was because he was busy with work. Then, they became shorter. His voice sounded different, distant. He would say he was tired and needed to sleep. Adanna would feel a pound of loneliness, but she would push it away, reminding herself of the sacrifice they were both making. She threw herself into her studies, spending long hours in the design studio, her fingers itching to create. She was learning so much, and she couldn't wait to show Chuka. She often sent him pictures of her designs, but his replies were just a simple nice or okay. Back in Lagos, something was changing. Amara's visits to Chuka's shop, which were meant to be occasional, became a daily routine. She would bring him lunch, help him with his customers, and stay to chat long after the sun had gone down. One rainy evening, Chuka's generator ran out of fuel. He called Adanna, but she was in class and couldn't pick up. Frustrated and sitting in the dark, he sent a quick text to Amara, just to complain. Within 30 minutes, Amara arrived at his shop, drenched from the rain, carrying a heavy jerrycan of fuel. As she stood there, shivering and dripping water onto his floor, Chuka looked at her, and something shifted in his heart. He saw her loyalty, her presence, and in that moment, the memory of his wife, who was so far away, seemed to fade just a little. It was on a night in December, exactly 1 year after Adanna had left, that the unthinkable happened. The Hammertown winds were blowing cold and dry. Amara had come to the shop with a flask of steaming tea. They talked for hours, until the shop was dark and the street was empty. Chuka offered to walk her home. But instead of going to her house, they found themselves back at his compound. His room was quiet, lit only by a single candle. Amara looked at him, her eyes filled with something more than friendship. "Chuka," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Adanna is so far away. Who is here for you? Who sees you every day?" Chuka knew it was wrong. A voice in his head screamed for him to stop, to think of Adanna. But the loneliness was a heavy blanket, and Amara was right there, warm and real. He reached for her hand, and that night, a terrible betrayal was born. For months, they hid their secret. The guilt ate at Chuka, but the comfort Amara provided was addictive. He told himself it was a mistake, that he would end it. But he never did. Then, Amara discovered she was pregnant. Fear gripped them both. They decided they had to tell Adanna, but whenever Chuka got on the phone with his wife, the words died in his throat. He couldn't shatter her word from so far away. So, they remained silent, their secret growing heavier with each passing day. 9 months later, Amara gave birth to a beautiful baby girl they named Ifeoma. Chuka held his daughter, and his heart split in two, one part still loving his wife, the other now fiercely loving his new child. Adanna's 2-year course was extended by another year due to a special advanced program her professors urged her to join. It was an honor, and she knew it would be good for her career. She called Chuka, expecting him to be happy. He sounded strange, but he agreed. "It's for the best," he said quietly. During that 3rd year, Amara gave birth to their second daughter, a tiny baby they named Kamsiochi. By now, Chuka and Amara were living together in the compound, pretending to the neighbors that Amara was just a cousin who had come to help him while his wife was away. The lie was thin, but people talked in whispers. Adanna, in her world of fabrics and designs in Germany, had nothing. She worked hard, dreaming only of the day she would finally return home to her husband. Finally, the day came. Adanna boarded the plane, her heart soaring with joy. She had bought beautiful gifts for Chuka and for Amara. She imagined the look of surprise on their faces. She pictured running into Chuka's arms and never letting go. She had called to tell him she was coming home, but his voice on the phone was so quiet, so strange. He said he would not be able to meet her at the airport because of work. A small worry nagged at her, but she dismissed it. Now, standing at the gate of her own home, seeing her husband with his arm around her best friend, and 2 little girls who had his eyes and her smile, the joy in her heart turned to ash. Amara scrambled to her feet, her face pale. Adanna, we can explain, she stammered. Chuka just stared, his mouth open, unable to speak. The two little girls hid behind their father's legs, picking at the strange woman with the heavy bags and the shattered expression. Adanna's legs gave way, and she sank to her knees right there in the doorway, a single, heartbroken wail escaping her lips. The question hung in the air, thick and suffocating: what happened next? The wail that escaped Adanna's lips seemed to shake the very foundations of the compound. Neighbors who had been hiding behind their curtains, listening to the gossip for years, now rushed out to see the spectacle. Adanna remained on her knees, her eyes fixed on the two little girls who clung to Chuka's legs. The older one, Ifeoma, who was about 2.5 years old, stared at Adanna with wide, curious eyes. The younger one, Kamsiochi, just a baby, began to cry, frightened by the shouting and the strange energy in the air. Amara moved quickly, scooping up her baby and clutching her close, a protective mother bear defending her cubs. And that action, more than anything else, drove a knife deeper into Adanna's already bleeding heart. "Get up, Adanna. Please, let's go inside and talk," Chuka finally found his voice. It was shaky, weak, nothing like the voice of the man who had promised to wait for her. He reached out a hand to help her up, but Adanna flinched away from his touch as if his fingers were made of fire. "Don't touch me," she screamed, her voice raw with pain. "Don't you dare touch me." She used the doorframe to pull herself up, her eyes scanning the compound she had left behind. She saw her favorite chair, now with a child's toy on it. She saw her flowering plants, now wilting and neglected. She saw her life, completely erased and replaced by another woman's. Inside the small parlor, the atmosphere was thick enough to choke on. Adanna sat on one chair, her body rigid. Amara sat across from her, still holding her baby, while Ifeoma sat on Chuka's lap, sucking her thumb. The silence was unbearable. Adanna looked at Amara, her best friend since they were 6 years old, the girl she had shared her sweets with, the girl she had cried to when her own mother passed away. "How long?" Adanna whispered, her voice dangerously low. Amara couldn't meet her eyes. She looked at the floor. Chuka cleared his throat. It started about 2 years ago. After you had been gone for a year. I am so sorry, Adanna. I am so sorry. 2 years. For 2 years, they had been living this lie while she worked her fingers to the bone in a cold country, dreaming of coming home to him. Adanna let out a bitter laugh that held no joy. 2 years. So while I was freezing in Germany, missing you, crying myself to sleep because I missed my husband, you were here, warming yourself with my best friend. She turned her gaze to Amara, and this time, Amara looked up. The shame in Amara's eyes was real, but it did nothing to soothe Adanna's rage. "And you, Amara. You, who I trusted more than my own siblings. You called me. You told me you were taking care of him for me. Was this the care you meant? Were you warming his bed while telling me not to worry?" Amara's lips trembled. "Adanna, I never meant for this to happen. It just did. We got lonely. We got lost." The word lonely snapped something inside Adanna. She shot up from her chair, her hands shaking. "Lonely? You were lonely. I was in a foreign land where I didn't speak the language properly. I was lonely. I was cold. I was hungry for the sound of my husband's voice. But I stayed faithful because I made a vow before God and my family. You, Amara, are not my friend. You are a snake I warmed in my own bosom." Ifeoma, frightened by the loud voice, began to cry. Chuka tried to comfort her, but Adanna looked at the child, and for the first time, she truly saw her. The girl had Chuka's nose, his eyes. She was his daughter. This was not just a betrayal, it was a whole new family. That night, Adanna did not sleep in the room she had once shared with Chuka. She could not bear to step foot in there, knowing Amara had been sleeping in her bed, using her pillows. Instead, she went to her mother's old house, which had been empty since the old woman passed away 2 years before Adanna left. It was dusty and dark, but it was hers. She sat on the cold floor, surrounded by cobwebs and memories, and she wept. She wept until her eyes were swollen and her throat was raw. She wept for her lost marriage, for her dead friendship, and for the 3 years of her life she would never get back. Little did she know, the village was already talking, and the news was spreading like wildfire. The next morning, Adanna woke up with a new kind of fire in her chest. The tears were gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She washed her face with cold water from the well, changed into a simple dress, and marched straight to her family house, where her elderly uncle, Uncle Obi, still lived. He was the eldest in their family and the one whose words held weight in the village. When Uncle Obi saw her face, he knew something terrible had happened. "Adanna, my daughter, what is it?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Adanna sat before him and told him everything. She left out no detail. She told him about the promise, the calls, the children, and the betrayal. Uncle Obi listened in silence, his face growing darker with every word. "This cannot stand," Uncle Obi said firmly when she finished. "Chuka married you with a bride price. You are his wife. What he has done is a disgrace to both families. And Amara, her behavior is shameful. A woman who steals her friend's husband has no place in a decent society." He called for a family meeting, and soon, the news reached Chuka's family. His own father, Papa Chuka, was furious. He had loved Adanna like a daughter. He marched to Chuka's compound that same evening and confronted his son in front of the whole village. "You have brought shame to this family," the old man thundered, his walking stick raised in the air. "You will fix this mess, or so help me, I will disown you." The village elders called for a meeting at the town hall. Everyone gathered: Chuka's family, Adanna's family, Amara's embarrassed parents, and curious neighbors. Adanna sat with her back straight, her face like stone. Chuka stood before the elders, his head bowed. Amara stood beside him, holding her baby, with little Ifeoma clutching her wrapper. The eldest elder, a man with white hair and wise, tired eyes, looked at them all. "This is a bad thing," he began, his voice echoing in the quiet hall. "A very bad thing. A marriage is a covenant. Children born out of wedlock while a wife is away is a deep wound. But we must find a way to heal this family, not destroy it." The elder's proposal was simple but devastating. "Chuka, you have wronged your wife greatly. You have 2 children with this other woman. Adanna, you are the legal wife. The decision must be yours. You can choose to take Chuka back, and Amara must leave the village with her children, never to return. Or, you can choose to divorce him, and he must pay you back every bride price, plus damages, and he must marry Amara publicly to remove the shame from her children. But if you choose this, you will be free." All eyes turned to Adanna. The entire village held its breath. Amara looked at Adanna with desperate, pleading eyes. Chuka looked at her with nothing but shame. Adanna stood up slowly, her heart pounding. She looked at Chuka, the man she had loved since she was a girl. She looked at Amara, the friend she had trusted with her life. Then she looked at the 2 innocent little girls, who had no part in this wickedness. She opened her mouth to speak, and the words that came out would change 4 lives forever. Before you leave this video, please do me one small favor. Click that like button, it helps our stories reach more people who need to hear them. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss another tale from under the baobab.